Forspoken is a game with a dedicated goal: charm you with its outstanding visual effects. This open-world action-adventure title is a console exclusive for Sony, and it seems as though it was made to represent just what the PS5 can do. No previous gen release this time, but notice the key words: console exclusive. PC users will still be able to get their hands on this one, and this is just looking magical, B. You know, growing up where I did, during car rides, it was a lot of times where the only thing to look at was open fields. Now, normally I would talk and crack jokes until I got in the car, and my family always wondered, why did I get so quiet? That's because I was imagining myself in open fields fighting all kinds of Final Fantasy type fiends and crazy-ish. This is pretty much what happens with the main protagonist in Forspoken when Frey Holland is suddenly transported from New York into the mysterious land of Athia. Speaking of Final Fantasy, the developers behind this game are Luminous Productions, which is a subsidiary of Square Enix. The only other title that Luminous is responsible for is Final Fantasy 15. Now, you would think that I would have played that game because of my whole car ride example, but I skipped it. Let me know in the comments section if that's something I need to give a chance. Both Final Fantasy 15 and Forspoken used the development company's engine, the Luminous engine, which had been in development since after the release of Final Fantasy 13-2. The studio head and co-director of this project is Takeshi Aramaki. Aramaki was also the lead physics programmer of Final Fantasy 13, a game a lot of people hated on, so I'm sure he had much to say about the way Frey is maneuvering throughout the world of Athia, as terrain traversal is one of the keys to making this game enjoyable. But from here on out, I won't bring up Final Fantasy anymore, as the team's other co-director, Takefumi Tereda, has stated the goal with Forspoken was to create a title unlike any other Square Enix title. He admits that this was very hard, and I know why. Not including before Square merged with Enix in 2003, they have about 432 games, so... Since Forspoken is meant to be a narrative-driven title, you need a team of A+ writers, right? And with this project, you get Todd Stashwick. It's a cool name, but honestly, so far, he has more acting credits than writing, so we'll see. Allison Reimer, the other head writer, has very few writing credits as well, no disrespect. Then you got people like Amy Hennig, who's been putting in work since Michael Jordan Chaos in the Windy City. Side note, I didn't know that game existed until my friend's cousin told me about it. Amy was a designer and artist on that one, but she has writing credit for Soul Revered 2, Legacy of Kain Defiance, and here comes the solidifier right here. Amy Hennig was the creative director and one of the writers for Uncharted Drake's Fortune, Uncharted 2 Among Thieves, and Uncharted 3 Drake's Deception. Now, while this OG vet isn't one of the head writers, I'm not sure. Maybe she wants to give the new talent a shot. And then you got Gary Whitta, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Another seasoned vet who wrote the screenplay for The Book of Eli and Rogue One, a Star Wars story. Also was a writer on Telltale's The Walking Dead Season 2, which was my So when looking at the writing squad, I think this story can be pretty good. I always like the concept of a regular person being brought into a fantasy world, sort of like you see in Dot Hacking and ReZero. That's what's happening here in Forspoken. Frey Holland is a young woman from New York who is minding her own business, loving her cats, and just chilling in the Big Apple when she had a rough life. But anyway, she is transported to the world of Athia via a purple portal that looks like it came straight off the back of a Yu-Gi-Oh card.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Upon arriving, she is greeted by a male voice but when she looks, it's nobody there. That's when she learns it's the mysterious bracelet now spiraling around her arm that's talking to her. Frey will be interacting with that bracelet, who goes by the name of Cuff throughout the game. Seeing this relationship gives me Kit and Michael Knight vibes, but younger audience might not know about Knight Rider. Now, before we get further into the story, let's talk about the dialogue itself. I won't get too deep into this criticism, seeing as the game clearly hasn't been released yet, but I've been seeing the dialogue get a lot of flack in the comment section for the trailer of this game. For example, during Frey's monologue about her new life journey, she says, "I'm seeing freaking dragons." And I agree, that sounds kind of lame. And it's only because I know from experience that when you see a dragon for the first time, that's not how you talk about it. I know y'all like, what? From experience? What are you talking about? But yes, last Friday, me and my homeboy saw a dragon right down the street. And it's a good thing my neighbor caught our reaction on video so I can show y'all what you would really say. Look, watch. Oh, shit! Anyway, all jokes aside, some of the stuff that I've heard Frey say does sound pretty cheesy. But in the defense of the writers, I do know what they're trying to go for. She's simply just trying to express how blown away she is from arriving in a whole new world. And Frey does arrive in Athia at a bad time. I'm sure she's seen her share of drama in New York, and hopefully it prepared her for her new life in Athia, because there was an event that swept the land called the Break, which infected the majority of living beings with something called corruption, turning the humans into zombies and animals into savage beasts. So far, there has only been one place mentioned as a safe zone in Athia, a village called Sipal, where the refugees reside. But I'm sure there is no real hiding from the main villains of this story, the Tantas. Once well-respected rulers of Athia, they suddenly became oppressors, and it doesn't help that they are the most powerful sorceresses in Athia. I'm unaware if this was because of the Break event or if the Tantas conjured the Break event themselves. But the arrival of Frey really pisses them off because they feel she is trespassing on their land. Tanta Scylla, the strongest of all the Tantas and Frey's worst enemy, won't rest until Frey is erased from the land. And what really has her worried, in my opinion, is the fact that Frey is the only one immune to the corruption. All Frey wants to do is return home, but fate brought her to Athia. How and why? We'll find out soon, and in one hell of a fashion. Because if the dialogue has you worried about Forspoken, I'm sure the combat and traversal mechanics will most likely lift your spirits. When Frey arrives in Athia, the cuff on her arm isn't there just to greet her. I'm pretty sure it's the reason that she can cast all of these crazy spells. This is the form of combat being used in Forspoken. You'll need all the spells you can learn to fight the corruption in Athia, especially if the only safe place really is Sipal. But Frey isn't only using her newfound magic abilities to do some fighting, it's also giving her some pretty impressive parkour abilities, which is another big draw of the game. In a gaming generation where open world is becoming sort of the new norm, it's always nice to have a faster way to travel than straight up walking. In Forspoken, each different form of magic has its own parkour skills. Mastering these will also help to dodge the onslaught of enemies attacking. Of course, these maneuvers will deplete stamina, so you'll have to learn to use them wisely. The traversal aspects of this one really does look fun, and like I stated earlier, that's important with all these open world games. Of course, there's a fast travel option by visiting certain locations, but the developers really put the time and effort into making you want to explore the world they created and utilizing your magic parkour skills to pass over various obstacles and reach places that would normally be unreachable. While the traveling is cool, what are we traveling to? Of course, to the big fights, we're not only trying to use magic to jump around and swing from trees, Frey is trying to give Hogwarts a lesson in magical combat. She will have access to 100 magic spells, and she's gonna need them. There are times you're fighting hordes of enemies, then there are times like Frey mentioned earlier where you're fighting freaking dragons. The developers mentioned that what makes Forspoken stand out is the hard work put in by the visual effects team. And Broski wasn't lying. The conjuring of magic in Forspoken is looking rather unique. It is one of the main things that catches your eye about this title, if not the main thing. This was done by careful design. Luminous Studios wanted to avoid auras and summoning circles. They wanted to be original. And of course, since this game is dealing with elements, we're gonna have enemies more vulnerable to certain elements than others, sort of like in Persona. Each spell has an attack, support, and parkour ability. And Cuff isn't just there to talk trash while you fight. If you aren't quick enough with your support skill or parkour dodging ability, he will take the hit for you and give you a nice chance for a counterattack. Now the fighting is being done with L2 and R2. R2 is to attack. Sometimes, depending on the spell, this may be being tapped, held, charged, it just depends. While L2 is your support ability. While using these back and forth, you are building up a meter called the Surge meter, which when filled can unleash an attack that can wipe out entire units of enemies or just do a large amount of damage to a bigger opponent. All in all, the Forspoken gameplay loop is looking solid. You have plenty of spells at your disposal for a variety of combat options, and so far all of the spells that I've seen are delivering excellent visuals. These spells are unlocked by leveling up and collecting pools of mana. And when it comes to the enemies, I'm liking what I'm seeing. We got a good mix between wildlife, zombie-like humans, Dark Souls-looking knights, and of course mythological creatures like dragons. And then we got the Tantas, with the strongest being Tantacilis. I think I'm saying that right. Since they are known as the most powerful sorceresses, I'm curious to see the different abilities of each one, kind of like waiting to see what each Espada could do in Bleach. These boss fights are going to be an influential factor in my personal rating of this game. I have faith in the traversal, so that's not something I'm too worried about. The banter between Frey and Cuff is sort of important too. All in all, again, I think this game will be a PS5 hit. It's kind of crazy that this and Hogwarts Legacy are dropping back to back just like the Callisto Protocol and Dead Space Remake. Man, we got a lot of games to play, don't we? The only thing that I'm worried about with this game is side quests. I hope it's not some tedious stuff. So far, I've seen things about following these cats or helping these cats out. I'm not going to get into that in this video. Maybe we'll get an update later on that because the game doesn't drop until January 24th, 2023. But I will mention something. Frey was getting that ass whooped up in New York. Now she's trying to take it out on the Tantas. Is she really ready for that smoke? Alright, that's my preview for Forspoken. It's looking real fun, which is why I had fun doing this preview if you couldn't tell. Make sure you like and subscribe to the channel and help it to continue to grow. Hit that Belaruski too. Lefty not really. Peace.